As soon as I start the recording, my printer starts doing something. All right, welcome everybody. Tonight's topic is going to be led by Pat, Charger Robotics, right?
Yep.
Got the right name. So Pat and his crew from Charger Robotics are going to lead the call tonight, and tonight we're going to be talking about week one wrap-up. So questions, observations, challenges, warnings for anyone else who still has to compete. I'm going to let you guys have the floor. Take it away. At some point here, I'll post a link in the chat. If you got a link through a friend on chat, I'll post a link so you can get to the page where you can watch the, I think 37 videos that are on YouTube of previous calls. Get signed up for the mailing list, add this to your calendar, and there's got to be something else. But anyway, go ahead, Pat. Take it away.
All right. Thanks, Scott. I guess this is my first one that I've attended. I watch every one of them Monday morning, but I've never came to a Sunday, I guess. So I'm excited to be here. And I saw there was no topic for this week, so I thought, well, a recap of week one would probably be useful for everyone who's looking to compete here coming up in the next few weeks. Grand Forks this weekend and Iowa the weekend after, and so on. Let's see. Before I get going, I guess, does anyone want to share anything, say anything, ask questions before I just kind of, I guess, talk a little bit about what I thought? And I guess with that, also congrats KnightKrawler on winning the regional. That was sweet. Oh wait, let's see. I think I should be able to share my screen. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't have it locked out. I think
okay.
It shouldn't be a problem.
I guess first things that I was going to talk a little bit about was just qualification matches and a little bit about like some of the randomness that happens with those. We just seemed like we had some bad luck and some of the stuff on our own that we definitely caused our own faults on. We started out really, really well, actually. Had some of the high scores right off the get-go. Had a really nice robot, good drive team. But some weird things happened for us. And we didn't place right where we wanted to, I guess, and we got into a tough position because of that. One of the things, I guess, with qual matches is we thought for sure everyone would want to hit the coopetition thing, and that just made sense. And when it was all said and done, it wasn't nearly as common as I thought it was going to be. For instance, I think we hit it as much as we could. We talked with the opposing alliance and asked them if they were planning on hitting it. And most of the time, people would tell you if they wanted to or not, and you kind of knew ahead of time if that was something you were going to do. And only one time we had a team say they were going to and not. I don't know. People thought maybe they lied. I don't think they did. I honestly think they didn't put a single note in the amp that entire match. So I think they just couldn't do it. That's my guess on it, or their mech didn't work. But for the most part, I would say people told the truth on when we went and asked them, which was good. And I thought with it being the biggest tiebreaker for ranking, it was important to coopetition, and that was our logic on doing it. We wanted to win any of those tiebreakers with that. Let's see. From there, for qual matches, most people didn't put I would say, insane amounts of game strategy into them. They just ran 3-0s and said, here we go. And obviously that's going to change once playoffs hits. I think once playoffs hit, there was definitely some adjustments made by alliances. We made some. I thought KnightKrawler's first match against 8 was awesome defense. I really liked the Source D. I guess I can pull that up here 1 second on kind of what I'm talking about with that. So I think they were red on that one, and blue. Most of the people during qual matches would play D right here, which was really effective against any team that was going to run right under the sub or right at the sub shot. And there was a good amount of teams that were really effective at it. And if you plopped a robot right there, I think they did that in the finals as well, you could shut down an alliance pretty effectively. Another really common place to play D, we saw like with Israel stuff, was like here, but it still leaves under the stage open. And KnightKrawler and Hilltoppers, they sent their D robot in the finals sometimes right here. And I thought that was really, really good. If the opponents can never get a note because they never can get into their source, it makes it really hard to score points. And then it was just a matter of if someone played D there, how maneuverable were you able to get into the source, actually get the note, and then get out. So many of the under the bumper intakes really struggled getting notes. And the elite under the bumper intakes grabbed them, touched them, owned them, sucked them in, and got out of there. The ones that struggled, they would just get log jammed in here, and then that D-bot could basically prevent anyone from coming in and out, which was very problematic. I don't know if that's still there or not, or if you can see that. Can you guys see that when I'm presenting that?
We can see the colors that you're drawing in the field. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Do you agree on that, Scott? Is that was what you guys were going for there, is to just not let people in the source?
I don't know if we have any of our strategy people on the call, but I can give you the feedback that I overheard, and which is not going to be all of it. I might get some of it wrong. Our second pick for our alliance, our third robot, we picked up a robot that we knew could play midfield defense well, but also was a decent shot. And so the goal there was for them to shut down midfield defense. We were never going to score in the speaker unless we were amplified. So both KnightKrawler and Hilltopper were feeding the amp. And then our midfield defender was going to be an opportunistic pick up a note defender. And then the goal was for them to go score whenever the speaker was amplified. And so to play defense and then be able to pop down half the field and be able to score whenever they could. That was the goal. Now, people may have noticed that we ended up with 4 robots in our alliance. They ended up dropping a swerve module in that first match. And they said they had it repaired just before the match was there, but they didn't have time to test it. And so my understanding was the alliance was, well, everybody should do this. If you're an alliance captain or if you're on an alliance period, your first question should be who's the first backup robot, who's the second back robot, and you should be able to go into your scouting data and figure out what can that team do. And so we asked that question, and it turns out that the first backup robot wasn't a robot that we were considering whether to pick the Cannon Falls team or to pick. No, I'm blanking on who it was. Basically, the team that we picked and the team that was first backup we were a toss up between those 2 robots. One played midfield defense and could score, and the other one was an amazing subwoofer blocker. So since we hadn't seen them drive with their new swerve module, we decided to go with the backup and not risk it because we knew they were a good bot. And then what that ended up doing for us is it gave us, we could adapt our defensive strategy based on who we were up against. So what you've drawn on the screen here, yeah, that was exactly what we did in that first elims match. And then
finals, you put the subwoofer D-bot.
And then anytime we were up against somebody who had mostly subwoofer scores, then we would play our backup bot. So it worked out really well. It was sort of fortuitous that we had our first defensive bot have a breakdown, and it gave us a chance to do that. But that's my understanding now. Not 100% certain on all the details, but that's my understanding of what happened.
Yep, and that's where for us, we were really close to pulling the backup robot as well. We had Iron Mosquitoes. They didn't move on a match for us. FTA came, helped. Maybe they moved for half the match once they got up and running again. It wasn't running right. Broke their intake. Said they had it fixed. And that was like a bummer for us as not being team captain. And Cloquet, I think that's the first time they've ever been in that kind of situation where they're team captain and they've made it that far. I went and helped their student drive coach, talked to him about backup robots. I went and talked to the head ref, explained when he had to turn in the note. Ultimately, Iron Mosquitoes said they got the thing fixed, and they didn't move. Shoot auto didn't move to start the match, and ultimately that was a lot of our demise. Is you can't win in playoffs 2-on-3. It's never going to work. Where Robo Huskies, I think, was our backup robot that we could have pulled, and they were someone we were also considering, which would have been any robot that could have drove would have been able to play D and help shut down that 8 alliance, I think. So that was kind of a bummer for us, but we obviously that's something to learn from. Is yes, make sure you know who backup robots are. Be willing to pull them in. Last year, Sam from Fairmont and DC or Chargers were together. Our first pick or our wraparound pick, they broke down the very first match and we lost. We ended up in the losers bracket and we pulled the backup robot, and they happened to be just a drivetrain. They literally couldn't move a game piece. And even with the extra drivetrain, it made a world of difference just to have another person on the charge station, be able to go play a little bit of D, help ferry ferry game pieces. And we pulled it all the way to the finals with them. And it was a ton of fun. So yes, backup robots, make sure you're willing to pull them in, especially if someone breaks. That was a big mistake by us this year. And one we didn't really have control of because we weren't the captains, which was a bummer. I could suggest it, and I did, but it doesn't mean, obviously, it was not our choice either.
Yeah, I think a lot of teams, and I've seen our team do this too, where they make the mistake of they don't ask who's the backup robot and what can they do until they need one. So, Rippin. So the Rippin robot, that was one of the first questions we asked when we got back to the pits and we got in a huddle with our alliance captains is, who's the number one backup? And somebody went and figured it out and came back, and it turned out that they were next on our pick list. So it was really good. It's good to know that. It's kind of a tip for anybody who's out there doing strategy and as part of an alliance on elims is know your backup. Make that decision to pull them in quicker. If you're sort of on the fence of whether a robot that broke down is ready to go or if they need another match to make sure everything's working.
Yep, for sure. I like that you're eating DQ right now, Sam. Okay, so I guess as long as we're in playoff mode a little bit, I'll talk a little bit about optimal alliances because this is something we put a lot of thought into, and we were in a tough scenario. We were, I don't know, arguably a top 3 robot, maybe at Lake Superior 4 or something like that. I don't know. We were one of the better robots there, but we were ranked 12th. and that was very problematic for us. So we didn't really have the option to decline, but we really preferred to have 2 amp bots on an alliance. So if you start looking at alliance makeup, there were not many really good amp bots at Lake Superior, and it became very problematic. In quals, we had to amp for our alliance a ton, way more than we wanted to, because we felt like we also had one of the best mid-range shots there. But we never could use it because we had to constantly feed the amp. Where in playoffs, if you had 2 really solid amp bots that also could shoot, you could go amp, like we would amp, teammate would amp, and then on your next cycles, you're just amplification, fire at will. Next time you go back, you're grabbing a note, feeding the amp, so on and so forth. Maybe you pull your D robot over and they can shoot a note as well, and that could help maximize. So we got into a weird scenario where our alliance captain couldn't amp at all. So when that happened, we had to find another robot that could amp, that also could shoot and do a little bit of everything. And when you're the third alliance, that robot doesn't really exist at 20, 22, 21, whatever that is. So we kind of took a flyer at a high ceiling robot that we felt like when things were working well for them, they could really do some things, but they also had issues at times, and those issues ultimately cost us when it was all said and done. Also, our auto really struggled on the last couple ones, and our alliance really needed us to run auto. We didn't have a really good complement robot for auto, where the best alliance makeups, multiple robots were running auto and really just taking their time making the pieces that they were going to get, and they didn't have to force like a crazy 5-piece or something. It was like, take your time, we'll do our 3-piece, we'll make it, you do your 3-piece, you'll make it, and this robot do a 2-piece. Perfect. That's really nice. Where when it was all said and done, like we were trying to force a 4.5 that we needed to do because they didn't have anything other than a single just shot. And we knew that we needed points, so it was like, well, we have to risk it. And that was hard, I guess. So I think if I'm looking at alliance structure, having 2 bots that can amp on an alliance that also shoot speaker and not solely from subwoofer makes a world of difference. And those teams that were really, really good in quals that just shot sub over and over and over and over, you knew that in playoffs that they were going to really struggle once a D-bot ended up down there. And one D-bot could shut down multiple subwoofer bots that were elite because they only shot from one spot. So just looking at Lake Superior, we thought we were in the conversation, I guess, a little bit with Edina. I thought we would have matched up really, really well with them, actually, to be a good complement bot to them. They ultimately decided to take a subwoofer bot, and that was really good at shooting from under the subwoofer or by the subwoofer. And it didn't pan out for them, I guess, because ultimately a D bot down there could really affect that alliance then. I don't know if anyone has anything else on alliances a little bit or what I just said with that.
I think a lot of what you said was really interesting as a spectator from this weekend, because what I've been trying to figure out is the role of a Quokka style bot with the ARM. Our team also has a Quokka bot this year, 4230, who won as the captain on the Northern Lights side, had a Quokka bot. Chargers had a Quokka bot. And what seemed interesting is that those Quokka style ARM robots were the most effective in prelims and qualification matches, because it seemed like those types of robots were able to do both the amp and the speaker about equally effectively. And then you could see, robots that were really designed for speaker scoring. So I'd think like KnightKrawler's robot or No Mythic's robot, which was like optimized for speaker, or like robots that were optimized for amp, like 1816 or Hilltoppers, right? And I think what's interesting about the Quokka style robot is it's not really optimized. It's good at both, but it's not optimized for either. So that's, I think, interesting to see how that lands for playoffs, especially because it seems like for prelims, just I guess a good amp bot ranked number 1 for prelims. That's 1732, but I know Sir Lancerbot, we thought for a while was going to rank 1, and they have, this incredible shot from just up at the subwoofer. And so kind of thinking about like, on one hand, the Quackabot is like the most versatile alliance member, but on the other hand, because of that, it's sacrificing potentially being, as fast as a speaker shot or as, fast as an amp shot. And I thought that was a really interesting trade-off that our team hadn't really considered compared to specializing. But also it was interesting to see how it panned out for some alliances and didn't for others. I also thought that from watching, the subwoofer defense seemed to be the most effective form of defense. And that is, I think, because I don't think there was any team at this regional really that had a 100% consistency shot that wasn't from the subwoofer, because I think that we saw misses from a bunch of teams. Like, even I was watching the Silicon Valley regional tiebreaker right now, and like 1678 was missing shots from the podium.
Yep. Jeremy, I see your hand raised. Or Jeremiah.
Oh, don't worry. I'm used to being called Jeremy. You said that, yeah, by the way, nice job, everyone that was over there. I was watching. It was really hard to teach when this stuff is going on.
Yep.
So earlier in the week, I was watching Israel event 1 and number 2, and they have a rookie team. I think it's like an old girl. It's Firefly, the team, and I was wondering, like, how did it make it up to the playoff? And then I went back, and all they did with the tank drive was just rove around in between the amplifier and the subwoofer, because with that robot you can just go forward and back the whole time and just keep disrupting services in that area. But then this weekend I watched both Northern Lights and Superior, and I felt like I saw less defense than I was watching the Florida regional, then Brazil. I'm like, why are there no defense? So my question to you guys is, if you notice your robot, mechanism is not being effective, is it just seem like a smart choice to be like, you know what, we're just gonna be a pain in somebody's butt at this region, at this point,
You don't bite me.
So,
yeah, for sure. We thought one D-bot could definitely affect multiple robots, like 2 or 3 of them, honestly. But in quals, there was a lot of teams that didn't really want to play D. They wanted to show off their robot and try to score, especially when they can shoot subwoofer effectively. So everyone feels like they can put in pieces. And because of that, the subwoofer shot being easy, they thought, let's score notes. And I get it. It helps make you get the extra ranking point, that RP for 15 or 18. But it also helped you lose matches at times, because a lot of those robots that were suboptimal, I guess, they weren't real good at picking up at the source, and they would clog up sources. Then they would drop notes on the source, and then really good thieves like Hilltoppers or Sir Lancerbots would be snatching up notes in a millisecond and out of there. And you're just feeding almost a win to the other team. But you also can't just tell them, hey, you need to go play D. This is your role. Because it's qual matches, and like I get that we know what we're doing, but at the same point, like they make their own choices as well. It's a little different in playoffs. Like in playoffs, when you make that alliance, like you guys are all in agreement, like we're doing what's best for the alliance to win this thing. And our alliance had very little experience, I would say. Like, okay, that was the first time they've been in that scenario, and they were more than happy to take instruction from us for the most part, with us being a little bit more experienced in those scenarios. But at the same point, like, we don't have the experience like KnightKrawler Hilltoppers either. And they even have less so of that. So experience in those scenarios goes a long way.
And even with the swerve bots, I mean, there's a lot of swerve bots in this in this competition. Defense sometimes it's about holding your placement, but with the swerve bot, where you can go virtually in a direction, that even versatility actually is a good factor for playing defense. It seems like it worked for other regionals that I was watching or other events that I was watching, just in that area. Where you get nicked is when somebody decided to start staging their shots, then but still in that effort to stage that shot, that slows them down significantly. Than just running over to the speaker and bumper in and shooting. If I don't know if you guys ever had a chance to watch this Team 1690 from the Middle East. Oh my, those guys were they were feeding the amps and then amplifying and shooting the same time. Like, good grief. I mean, that robot was impressive. So something, if you haven't seen that one, just check it out.
Yep, for sure. And
Jeremiah,
go for it, Scott.
Jeremiah, to go back to your original question of if your mechanisms aren't working great, should you play defense? I think the answer is yes. I think that it was something that a lot of teams should be scouting, because a lot of people are looking at it's this early, and you're competing next week, right? Yeah. So this early, it's not realistic that you're going to have 25 robots that are good shooters. And so you're looking for those bots that can play good defense. And so if you get out there and you're struggling with your intake, go show that you can play defense. Or if you're struggling with your shooter, go show that you can play defense. And then if you can snatch up a note that got missed, and then the second that you don't have anybody down there to defend, cross their wing line, shoot that note all the way across to your friends on your side. I think I only saw in Lake Superior, I saw one robot that was shooting notes. You can't shoot full court, but you can cross that wing line. You can shoot 2/3. And it was awesome that there were bots down there. I mean, I think one of them, they shot and they practically, their friend, their buddy, scored in the speaker, and they practically just stood there, and the note, I think, almost went right into their intake, and they could shoot again. So really neat strategy. I only saw that happen on one match. Of course, I was in the pits a lot of that time. But I think there's definitely a space for a team that says, we didn't get done what we wanted to do. Maybe we'll be able to do it for our second competition if you have one, and just focus on defense, because I definitely think that's an important thing that people are scouting. So don't feel like you have to score.
And that's exactly why I asked the questions, because with our codes for our mechanism, because our swerve drive is from Rev and it came generic code. And so then when we added our mechanism code, it just dampened our speed. And so then what I did earlier this week, separated them and just went back to the generic code from Rev. And, our robot was just driving just fine. And so if we can't figure out what's causing that problem, because we have GNR and then Granite City. So we have a little bit of room in between that. That's why I was asking, like, maybe just tell this kid, drive the heck out of this the next couple of days, and let's get over there and we'll get up to the practice field, figure out how we can play defense and not, I mean, we're not the strongest shooting team anyway. So
when you say that when you run your mechanisms, it's messing with your swerve drive, are you having brownouts? Are you having can overruns? Loop overruns? Do you know what's going on?
I don't, and that's kind of what I was trying to text you about the other days. I don't know exactly where our problem lies, but one thing I know for a fact is that when the codes are all mixed together, stop. Sorry, I got a puppy here. Then pretty much our robot goes so slow. If you ever seen Despicable Me when Professor Navario saying goodbye and then he's still in the frame, that's how it runs. But then Friday decided to, like, you know what, let's go back to the basic, just the ref code. And He was driving it just fine. We even did a demonstration for the Lions Club yesterday, and it worked just fine. So tomorrow is going to figure out what's really causing that, slow down in there, because we don't see any error code, error messages in the driver station to say, what could be causing that. I don't know, and plus I don't know much about computer programming, so you should know that, Scott.
Jeremiah, so I'll add two things with that, I guess. We had a match, and we were one of the better shooting bots there and amp bots, I guess. We weren't the best, but we were good at both. And we played with Megahertz, which we were in state with last year, or one state with last year, and we had a crazy match where a note ended up in our robot. I don't know, maybe a quarter into the match, and we had to go play D. And even though we were a good shooting bot, we had to go play D because we had a note stuck in us. And Spencer, he's here. He's our drive coach, a student, and they went over and shut down the other team, and we won the match, which was really, really cool, especially with being down a bot that was going to score, because we just didn't let him score points the rest of the match. And then Scott, the robot you saw that was doing that horde strategy or shooting notes across, that was us, I guess. That's one nice thing about the Quokka's bot is you can put your arm up and shoot that angle. We would pick up from source here. Let me see here if I can. So we would pick up from source, drive to here, and then shoot a note under stage to this corner. And our driver got really good, and our co-driver got really good at hitting that shot where he could put it under the stage and shoot it to that corner. In quals, theoretically, it was really good for us because we could optimize on put in amp, grab, put in amp, or if it was amplified, we could shoot it over there, drive one over, shoot it, grab it, shoot it. But in reality, it caused us a lot of problems, actually, because in quals, our teammates didn't quite understand what we were trying to explain to them is like, if an opponent is coming, you need to protect that note because we're over on the other side of the field. And a lot of times they would abandon the note and like go do their own thing instead of force a penalty on a teammate. So we needed more cooperation, I guess, with teammates on that. And that kind of backfired on us at times where, I mean, I said Hilltoppers was the best at it. And part of it is they had two drive coaches. They only had one driver. And I think one drive coach's entire job was just to search for notes that they could steal and were opportunistic with, which was kind of cool. But yeah, we would come across and launch it across because cycle time was faster to shoot one across and then go right back to the source and grab one and drive one across. And I think that could be a strategy for teams to try and use, as long as your teammates are on board and can help protect the notes laying on the ground, I guess. Anyone have questions on that concept there? Here was a random rule that I don't know if it ever came into play really, other than 2977. They had an auto and they came and disrupted these notes in the middle and they shot them into the wing. And they were shooting them too far in auto. So if you do the disruptive path, make sure you're not shooting them too far. I think it's 5-point penalty per note. I don't know if they were ever called on it, but they definitely were not legal with it.
What's too far?
Too far is into the wing at all. As long as if it touches that red line, it's too far.
Okay.
We talked with the ref on that, and he did say that was probably a mistake. We were just curious on it more than anything. Let's see. Other things. What was that?
You see two big bubbles?
Oh. Did anyone have anything on like routes or paths? A lot of teammates asked us about like how you wanted to get over to the source. And for us, we just kind of found that not assigning routes seemed to work better. And you kind of found what worked to get over there. One thing that we typically did, I guess, was we maybe put 2 robots on the front end of the source and 1 robot on the back end of the source, just to keep it a little bit cleaner, that whoever the 1 robot going to the back end always knew they were going there. But how to get across or how to get over there, it was kind of whatever was easiest for you at the time, depending on where opponent robots were. It was like that, or if it was coming under. I actually thought this way, coming through this spot right here, a lot of times was one of the hardest methods, and one of these other ones seemed to be a little bit cleaner. But I guess it just depended on your robot and driver. I thought when it was all said and done in alliance selection that teams still overlooked teams that could shoot from some distance, that they just valued amounts of notes moved and scored, and they valued those subwoofer teams way too high. And when playoffs comes and defense becomes a real thing, a robot that can shoot from podium or from amp protected zone, even if it's a little bit slower, is a more valuable robot than one that has to shoot from under sub.
Yeah, and I know that with our draft process, there was a little bit of miscommunication there on what our wraparound was going to be, but ultimately, I think that's the source of my opinion and Ian's opinion, who was one of our alumni there helping with drafting and that sort of strategy deal, is that with the Iron Mosquitoes pick, we have a really nice mid shot that can shoot over defense. Iron Mosquitoes has a shot from podium. And then if our alliance captain Ripsaw was playing defense, it would be essentially impossible for alliance to catch any defense during amplification.
Yep. One team I thought that was actually super overlooked and I really liked, was here. Let me pull them up real quick. How do I stop that? And this. Okay, I thought Mustang Robotics 4174 actually would have also been, it was another option for us. This team was a Quokka's bot as well. And I actually thought maybe going double Quokkas was a reasonable option. And I know they were ranked down lower, but it would have given us another amp bot, and they had decent auto, where we wouldn't have had to run our 4.5 piece, where we could have had them run something like a 3 piece or a 4 piece, and we could have ran the double wing shot where we had like an auto from shoot, pick up from wing 1 or near the amp, and then pick up 2 from out in the center. And I thought that would have been another option for us anyway. Ultimately, we decided to go with having more versatile shooting than having the extra ability in auto. So autos that we had, I guess, I thought was super interesting for teams, but we would have like this auto. And that's the same exact auto that Hilltoppers had as well. They started in a little different spot, but they had the same exact 4 piece. The downside of us, if we had ever had to face Hilltoppers with it, is they just had a faster drivetrain, so they could run it faster than we could. So if you're looking at what autos to potentially make, something like that was very reasonable. Most teams would do something like this. as well. If you have that auto, I highly, 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 highly encourage you to make one where you go to, we called it 1. So the amp side was 1 and the field side was 3, where you can go to 1 first and where you can go to 3 first. By having both, we had matches where they had to go to 1 first. And if they have to go to 1 first, we couldn't run our 4-piece double wing. Where if they could go to 3 first, then we would have that option, which was important. Then KnightKrawler, and a lot of teams, I guess, had this, but as well as we did, where you would shoot this one and then run out here, shoot, run here, shoot. And then a nice, if you already have that, a nice pair to that would be where you shoot here, grab this, and then grab that. So it's a little bit easier 3-piece than the other 3-piece because you're grabbing this closer note. And then your teammate theoretically can get this. And then something like Hilltoppers, double wing. And that's a really nice looking Alliance auto for playoffs. Any other thoughts or comments on auto, I guess, on what teams liked or did? I guess in quals we did run this 3-piece as well one time, but for the most part we found out that this double wing one just meshed really, really nice with most teams, and it got us an extra piece. Yep.
Question. So if you start with 2, if let's say you set up an auto that scores 2 notes in the amplifier, so does that mean when you're ready to tally up, you can add up, co-op or go into an amplified speaker? And the thing I didn't understand really with these matches, do you communicate with your human player when to push the amplify button so that way it's not wasted time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So real quick, Jeremy, can you shoot into speaker at all?
We're about to test that tomorrow. One of my parents built us a speaker this weekend, so we're going to test that tomorrow.
Because if you are an amp bot and you want to put them in the amp during auto, we did pair with a robot that could do that, and ultimately as an alliance we decided to just put them over here and just back out, because ultimately they're in the way of getting extra notes that are worth 5 points instead of 2. So because of that, you'll probably never run your amp filling in auto because there's just more points by these other notes. With that being said, a bot that could just sit in the front or sit on the side and just shoot a note in and stay there was super valuable. Like that is a very useful auto, where you just shoot note into speaker. That's 5 points. That's a good auto.
Well, but what if I know, and I understand what you're saying, but what if you have with a note that starts in your robot, you dump it in your amplifier and just stay put and let those other people do whatever movement they need to do. And let's say you score in the amplifier and then you move up and just stay out of the way, and then once you go into teleop, you can just grab one of those notes in the middle, come back, and then that's relatively speaking, theoretically speaking, obviously, but score back in your amplifier, and then with that, gives you a quick amplification within a short time, if that's something that can be communicated with the alliance. Like, I mean, unless somebody said, well, we can score all of these and so just stay out of the way, then you listen to the alliance, obviously. But
right. So yeah, I mean, if you can and you stay out of those robots' way, then it could work. But there's just not a lot of room over there.
No.
We're in this area. Like, even to coordinate and not hit each other was a real problem. Where having even some ability in auto to where you can adjust your path or delay a little bit was very useful for the teams that had it. And just being able to coordinate that, I guess.
But
Yep.
see, because the thing with the amplifier is it's kind of still within, midway of that line of where your how you call it, your starting point, your home is. So right there, it's kind of, so that it wouldn't still count as you leaving your your starting point, right?
Yeah, it would not count. So if you put your robot here, for instance, and you slid over and put it in the amp,
and
then you would have to almost go in this direction. But the problem is, if you have another robot that would start here, that was one of our favorite autos. Like, we would never been able to mesh that auto with that.
Yeah.
Or Hilltopper's auto, which was really good. Would never be able to mesh with that.
Jeremiah, if you have the ability to score into the speaker during auto, you should.
Okay.
Because you know the goal of trying to be amplified when you come out of auto, you're going to get 5 points for those shots. Well, you get 5 points for the shots in auto, so just shoot them in auto. But I agree with what Pat's saying here is that there were a lot of matches where robots ran into each other. So as important as it is for people to build a variety of autos, I think it's just as important for teams to be able to have an auto where they just shoot and they sit, because crossing the line is not worth that many points. And if you mess up the auto routine of someone else who can get one or even two or heck 3 more notes, the last thing you want to do is screw up that auto just so you can cross the line and get what is 2 points for crossing the line, right?
Yep, 2.
So crossing the line for 2 points, that's never going to be a good trade if you hit somebody who is going to score a 5-point note. But yeah, there were a lot of autos that ran into each other. One of the things I was going to say on autos is, anybody on here from the Arrowhead Robotics Coalition DNA on here tonight? I just want to give a huge shout out to them for setting up a full practice field at Northern Lights and Lake Superior. Man, that thing was invaluable. Patrick, I think Pat, you guys were out there like every 20 minutes, it seemed. You guys were just waiting for someone not to show up, right?
Sam was there even more than us, I think.
If it wouldn't have been for that full field, we basically walked into Lake Superior with no autos. And so we did all of our autos at the competition. And if it wouldn't have been for that full field, there's no way we would have had any autos really working. We had so many problems with photon vision. We had to disable it for autonomous. We turned it back on during Telia. We would if statement around the photon vision updates, but we had to end up turning it off because we just had so many issues with photon vision messing up our auto paths. So we threw away everything we had done at school and we just drove pure odometry. And so that required us to, for the most part, start over with our autonomous routine. And had it not been for that full field, wow, I don't know what we would have done.
Natasha?
I was just wondering, now that you have to be, you have to pass inspection before you get onto the field, the practice field. Were you being held up because there was an over allotment of teams wanting to get that done? I mean, was it a problem getting an inspector over to your bot in time, or how do they prioritize who gets the inspection first?
Yeah, let me take that one as one of the inspectors on site and the lead robot inspector for Great Northern this week. It's first come, first serve for inspection. We had a line at Northern Lights that was 30 teams long, basically right out of the gate. It took us an hour and a half just to get that line through the initial sizing and weighing. Not to mention getting inspectors out to see everyone. I think Lake Superior was actually worse at 40 teams in that first hour and a half, 2 hours period. So if you're looking to do practice field in the morning, you need to rush to inspection as quickly as you can.
And be ready to pass inspection. Like, hopefully you've gone to a week 0 that has had volunteer that's came and inspected robots. We were at STMA and we're inspected, and we were pretty confident we were going to pass inspection right out of the gate. So bring a robot ready to go and be confident that you're basically going to pass, and that way you can get over to the practice field. And part of it is the practice field for us. And the actual game field was different than what we had at home. I mean, we obviously built part of a field at home, but it's still not the same as the competition field. It's not. They always act a little differently. So with autos, one thing that I would like to note as well with them is on practice day, as well as in quals, there were times when teams just really wanted to run and show off their, like, the one team told us, like, we have a 6-piece auto. Okay, I guess go for it. Like, and making a 4-piece auto, I guess, is useful, where you get the 3 first notes and the one you score, because if you have 2 teammates that really don't have any autos, it allows you to maximize points a little bit in auto. But if instead of focusing so hard on trying to get the first 3 close notes, taking your time and running a high quality percentage shot of getting 3 notes in or 2 notes in is even better. Like, I would even prioritize it higher. Having a variety of good quality 2 and 3 note autos is a better use of time long term than it is to try to get a 5-piece auto, because your 5-piece auto, the odds are you're rushing something and you're missing 2 of them anyway. So just dial in a good 3-piece and then dial in another good 3-piece and another good 3-piece. And that is a way better deal. And for us, it was a bummer. Like, we couldn't pull out some of our really good 3-pieces because our alliances, we had to kind of rush some things and run some of our more complicated autos. And it was like, well, that's what we have to do, I guess, to try to win this match. And you pushed sometimes more than you should have. Like, maybe we were better off just running a good solid 3-piece.
We're not going to be close to something like that. So
I have a question about damage. I'm curious to know how many other teams took a ton of damage. Pat, if you can stop sharing, I have a couple of photos I want to share. Oh, let's see here now. What is the window? Here we go. I think this is my window. Let's see if it's going to show the right window. It did not. It does this every time. It previews one window.
That's a nice picture, though.
And, well, thanks. Let me see if I can just share the app. Oh, entire screen. Here we go. Maybe this entire screen one is going to work. Okay. So this is the side of the robot. So this is through our bumpers, and we buy oodles and noodles, 2 and 5/8 inch noodles. They're like $9 a piece. Actually, they're so expensive we started calling them noodles because they're way too fancy to be called noodles. But we buy these really solid core, really durable noodles to take a lot of impact, and that way a robot's not pushing all the way through the plywood. I think probably every single bumper board is cracked. We're planning on having to completely redo our bumpers. This is the side of our robot. This is the intake side of our robot. We just got pushed in a ton, and we pulled these out with it. We bought a C-clamp on and put a straight edge and pulled them back out. I know that Gears was right next to us. They had a 1x2 get pushed in so far it cracked. The aluminum cracked, and it like almost broke in half down the Versa chassis 1x2. And then Hilltoppers, they were badly bent, and they were pounding on it with a hammer in finals, trying to get it straightened out using clamp to pull back. We're basically going to have to tear a robot down to the swerve modules and replace a ton of aluminum. The polycarb on our shooter needs to be replaced because it's cracked. Both of our shooter wheels, the axles, the hex shaft axles are bent. We took a ton of damage. Last year, we virtually had no damage on a robot. This year, the only thing I think that is in good shape is the A-frame that holds up the pivot for our shooter. We were really surprised how much of our robot is going to have to be replaced before our next competition.
What are you using for thickness on your chassis?
Well, we have a top frame. So what you're looking at here in this photo here, we have a one by one top frame that goes all the way around, and then we have 1x2 in the bottom. This top frame is probably going to get replaced by 1x1 steel all the way around. And then
what's the wall thickness?
I think it's 1/8 or maybe a little bit more than that. It's the heaviest stuff we could get at Cormark, which is in Minneapolis. And I think we're going to probably end up replacing our bumper. I think we're going to go with oak or maybe a Baltic birch, some heavy plywood for the intake side of our robot. It depends on if we feel like oak will hold up more, it won't get cracked. But our bumpers are going to have to be completely redone to be able to hold up to it a little bit better.
I know the Mosquitoes took some pictures. Might have even been practice day or
finals or playoffs.
Oh my god, they bent their frame. They were using Rev, I think, or maybe just the pre-drilled Vex stuff, but splintered their bumper, like shattered the plywood on their bumper. Like it was rough looking.
Yeah, it was a lot of really high impact collisions that were happening, or a lot. I don't know. Did anyone else suffer significant damage on their robot?
Yeah, we had a swerve drive wheel explode. We took a hard hit. It's the 3D printed one, so I mean, maybe that was doomed anyway. But yeah, quarter inch aluminum plate bend pretty good after some impacts on our intake. And the other one we saw was if you're the driver station right in front of the source, robots hit the wall really hard and driver stations fall off a lot. And so driver station damage. Yeah, actually one of our alliance partners, I think it was KnightKrawler hit the wall really hard and the laptop goes flying, and they're trying to scramble to get back in the game. And it's like,
yeah, we did it. You're right. It was us that did it. We were trying to do a pickup over there and went into the wall to get a note and knocked their driver station off. And I went over right afterwards and I said, "Hey, do you guys need Velcro?" And they're like, "No, we got it. It was a brand new laptop. We forgot to put Velcro on it." And then we realized that we had Velcro on our laptop, but we didn't have Velcro on the bottom of our brand new driver station to Velcro down. So we added a bunch of Velcro to our new driver station we built this summer. So yeah, teams, get Velcro on your stuff because man, there are a lot of high impact hits on that wall.
We lost our computer as well due to a high impact hit that hit the wall and tossed our driver station off of it. Computers Velcro to the driver station. Driver station was not Velcro to the field, I guess, and we lost our computer. And we died during that match. Like, you can't move if your computer's turned off because it smashed against the floor.
Our driver had said that we were adding Velcro, and he was like, "Oh yeah, that last match I had to hold the driver station against the wall with my hip while I was driving." And we're like, "Well, why didn't you tell us?" But yeah, get your stuff Velcroed down because a lot of hits on that wall.
And with that, like for us, we're just running Neos on our swerve modules, and this was our first year doing swerve. Holy cats, we were like jealous of the teams that were running Krakens or Vortexes or whatever. Like, the amount of speed some of the robots were putting out was insane. Like, we want that speed, or everyone wants that speed. I think it was crazy how fast some robots were moving.
You see though, I was talking to my kid on Saturday. We new to this whole swerve thing. He calls it a swivel chair on motorized swivel chair. Basically, though, we thought maybe bump up our speed, but then I'm also thinking, I'm like, well, if you bump up your speed, you can, control it fairly well. and you start smashing yourself against the stage and other few elements too, you might cause yourself more damage than driving at a manageable speed where you can, do what you need to do efficiently and not damage your own robot too.
Yeah, not to throw my driver under the bus. I think he's in here, but if we probably gave him Krakens, he probably would have wrecked the robot and it would have never moved again. Who knows? Arm ripped off against stage, right, Wyatt?
Yeah,
I talked to one
totally.
team that was running Krakens, 5913 Patriotics, and they were having some major issues with brownouts. And I don't know if that's because they didn't have the current limiting down, but Patriotics is usually a team that has their act together pretty well. Like they're usually pretty good, and they said it would brown out like 40 times a match.
Mm.
So I don't know if that's just that the amps those things can draw, or what, or if it was just a programming thing for them. But
sure.
And
I will
Novatech
say.
also.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Rasmus.
Oh, I just want to say, Novatech also ran into some browning out during matches. Because we're using a lot of motors this year, so our whole PDH is filled with power. And so at the start of the event, we were definitely running into current limiting issues, and we had to change those current limits throughout the competition.
I will say that they were related to speed. There was a fair bit of talk on our pits as the day went on about going. We're running STS with L3s, and there was a fair bit of talk about going back to L2s because the speed wasn't so much an issue as it was getting around defensive bots. And so if you get pinned into a corner, our driver, who's used to L2s from last year, was really asking for more torque to be able to push his way around a robot. So if you think you might end up being a defensive robot, more torque versus, well, it depends. I don't know how the gearing stuff works with Rev. We've only ever run STS, but we're actually talking about dropping speed in favor of more pushing power. So I don't know how that'll shake out, but it did come up several times in our pits.
Yeah, we're gonna be doing the same. We geared like the max rev speed, and it was not like the move. The top speed is not. There's a lot of dodging around and accelerating in this game, more than we maybe thought. It'd be more, open full field cycles, more like last year. And there's too many obstacles. You have to break ankles and twist hard and things, and it's not. You really won't be hitting top speeds over 20 feet per second, I don't think. Maybe better teams will, but that's kind of what we were seeing.
We're also a lot heavier than we thought we were going to be, and so. The high speed ratios, gear ratios only work so well as if you're light.
I think that'll be interesting to see how that pans out over the season. Another interesting thing I noticed when I was looking at the blue lines today is that we haven't seen this many first seed alliance upsets since I think 2017. Only about 50% of events were won by the first seed, and there were only a couple events where it was 1v2 in the final that I counted, which, especially compared to the past couple seasons, it seems like this is a very upset-friendly game. I mean, there's 3 seed obviously won Northern Lights, and it was 1v7 over at Lake Superior this year.
I agree with that. I was looking at most of the week run regional events, not so much the districts, but yeah, there was a lot of lower seeded alliances that were in there right up to the end. It was kind of nice to see.
I'll just say there's a lot of good robots as part of it, and you get an alliance where you're a captain and you can do a little bit of everything, and you find another couple robots, especially in the back end of the draft, and your wraparound is just so much better than maybe what your 1 seed's wraparound is. And that 1 seed, yep, they can kind of pigeonhole that person into being a D-bot. But even like when our alliance was up and running, they sent a D-bot on us, but all 3 of us just stayed O. And everyone was actually functioning. We had multiple bots that could shoot from distance, and that was a really big problem for the D-bot. Where the 1 seed, if their third pick is solely D, and cannot do anything else, that's problematic for that alliance, depending on who they face, or for sure if the other alliance has multiple amp bots. I looked at other things I jotted down as I wanted to talk about. One of the things that I thought was actually really interesting about the entire competition as well was human players. And just so like people watch matches and watch human player and how they did, that was actually like a really big problem for us at times, is working with alliances and trying to like teach them how to feed our robot from the source and as well as their robot was problematic. They would put multiple notes out, people would come steal them, they would wait too long. It was kind of a mess. So we actually decided at some point that we had a really good human at tossing notes onto the microphone, and that's irrelevant. So it doesn't matter if they're good at tossing notes on the microphone and they know when to amp. It's more important to have a consistent, correct feeding at the source, that you're not feeding the notes to the other team. That our human player is really smart. He could help correct things if our alliance mates were making mistakes down there. So we started having our human player go to the source instead of the amp. And part of it is our drive coach was a student this year. He's really good at knowing when amp was going to happen, and he could communicate it because our alliance mate human player could be right there and could help know when to amplify if he was confused or if she was confused. And that was something we did not see coming. We thought for sure we would have our human player on the amp, because that would free up our drive coach to not worry about that, because our human player had that stuff down. When it was all said and done, we ultimately decided that it made more sense to put our human player down on the source and quals, because we had a lot of poor human player play at the source, I guess. I don't know if anyone else saw that as well.
My only comment is I think the timing, it takes a while to get the timing figured out. For our robot, we really needed the human player to drop those notes when we crossed the center line so that they were done rolling around by the time we got there. And I think that's going to just improve as the season goes on here. People are going to see that and recognize that better. So that's my only comment, I think, on human players, is that timing is going to take a bit to figure out.
The other one we found on like human players at the source is having some kind of signing to your drivers, whether they like pick up a note or not, or they miss it. I mean, I actually was watching some VODs and I saw KnightKrawler basically jumping with a thumbs up. We were doing the thumbs up, but the little hop might be something we add in that seemed to really make it clear that you've got the note and you're drive away fast. And
we added LEDs to the robot in the pit so that they would change color when we picked up a note, but sometimes your note doesn't feed all the way in. So it, you need that extra person signaling that you got it, you can leave. We had multiple pieces of feedback from our drivers that it's impossible to know if they have a note. So we pulled out the LEDs that we had on last year's robot. We actually ended up using the same setup and stuff. We just had to pull it all out of the drawer, reconnect all the wires, and remember how to connect it all. Download the drivers and all that stuff that we were using previously, and get it back, get LEDs on the robot. They worked okay, but those notes were just so funky. They didn't always feed in correctly.
Yeah, and with the LEDs, like for us, we had them as well, but sometimes they misread. Like sometimes the sensor would trip and trick the LEDs and say, "Hey, we got a note," but we don't. Our driver one time came all the way across the field thinking he had a note because the LEDs signaled he had a note. And it's like, dude, you spent a whole entire cycle thinking you had a note. That's a bummer. Like, where if the human player would have said, like, no, you don't have a note. Like, trust the human player over the LED. Or I know last week or 2 weeks ago, you guys were talking about adding rumble to your controllers to say, hey, I have a note right now. It's rumbling. But a sensor can still lie to you, where the human player can like have a huge impact on that, like, and save a ton of time actually.
instead of adding LEDs, we just did a smart dashboard. We're gonna try to add a rumble too, but we just did a smart dashboard, green, red on a beam break. But yeah, you're right. They can fail you.
Yeah, and the one place where I feel like having some sort of signal is also very important is because for Novotech we went floor and amp. So a lot of time we were out near the speaker picking up notes that had dropped. And so sometimes we pick up a note on the ground. Like sometimes we would pick up a note on the ground and then head over to shoot it and say, oh, we didn't pick up the note. And that's a place where a human player can't really say that you have a note if they're on the other side of the field. So I feel like some sort of sensor would be very helpful there. Oh, and that's a question I had actually. How did teams find it going from like more sort of like source pickup versus floor pickup, or floor pickup at the source, or something like that?
I saw very, very few source load. I think almost every team we played with or played against had from the floor. I'm sure it comes from auto, just needing it for auto, but really didn't see it play much at all, really.
I think I may have seen 2 robots the whole weekend that were feeding from the source. Maybe it was just one. I know pretty sure there was one, at least one, that fed from the source. But I agree, Sam. I think everybody was planning to pick up for the ground from the start.
I'm going to add to that a little bit. At week 0, we were with Becker at Wilmer, and they actually could pick up from the source, legitimately drop into their robot. And I was at first like kind of confused on why. Like, why wouldn't you just pick up off the ground? But after watching the notes and how they bounce and how awkward it is at times, and watching how clean they were at Wilmer, I was like, that might honestly be faster. Where at first I was like, nope, you just drive in there, you smash the note, and you get out of there if it's on the ground. But so often it's not actually on the ground. It's like bouncing around and moving, and it's stuck against a wall awkwardly. Where if you just April tag or however it is, and you slap up against the wall, it drops, boom, you're gone. And it was clean. I'm excited to see them play week 4 and see if they continue to pick up off the source or from the source, or if they're going to pick up off the ground more often at the source. But that is something interesting to see how it plays out.
Durham was picking up just from the source, I believe, over at Northern Lights. I don't think they had any ground intake at all. And they were an alliance captain, but they could also trap a little bit too. Not the best trapping robot, but they were able to do it, so that probably helped them as well.
Someone, Pat, you mentioned April tags, which reminded me. I want to show. Let's see here. Window. Slack. Let's see if this can happen. Ugh, this is not going to work again. All right. Which was the way that I did that last time? Window, entire screen. Try this one. There we go. We have a dream of being able to use the April tag on the stage so that we can trap faster. Our trap worked twice. We were able to trap twice in our quals matches, and we missed it the other times. And right now, it takes us about 15 to 20 seconds if things are going well to be able to trap. And we have a dream of being able to write code to be able to use the April tag so that the robot positions itself perfectly, does the backup, raises the arm, grabs a chain, does everything fully automated. Our autos last year were way more complicated than what it would take this year to be able to do this trap. However, it turns out that the April tags are behind polycarb, and on 2 sides at Lake Superior, they were not readable. There was one out of the 3 sides was readable because they're behind the polycarb, and the lights would just reflect off the polycarb and would cause the photon vision not to be able to read the tag. So that was a little surprising and disappointing. Luckily, we didn't have time to try to build a fancy auto trapping auto. So it wasn't like it was time wasted, but it is giving us pause in terms of figuring out how to be able to do that better for our next event. I'm hoping that we can build a more reliable, more complicated trapping mechanism for 10K. But I think our plans might be shot based on what we learned from photon vision.
I mean, yeah, and trapping is not easy, I guess. I think at Lake Superior, I mean, who could trap? KnightKrawler, Megahertz, you guys could trap. Wingnuts, I mean, they basically sold out to trap. I don't know who else. And it was obviously huge for KnightKrawler just to be able to pick up a couple extra RP, because that fourth RP currently is not easy to get. We got it one time, and we knew that it was an opportunity in that match where it's like we should win, spend the time, we can actually harmonize climb, and we have another robot that can climb. And we only had one other match where that was even a glimpse of a chance of it happening in our 9 quals, where we would have had to shove a robot over and harmonize with them, and they were not set up optimally to harmonize. But we knew we could win the match pretty easily, so it was like, well, let's try it. And ultimately, we didn't get it to work. So in nine matches, we had one where we could do it, and basically another half a match where it was like, well, this is kind of a pipe dream, but maybe it can happen.
Yeah, harmonizing was really, my observation was that harmonizing was really tough if you had 2 climber hooks.
For us, we had the 2 climber hooks, but it locked into the chain. They had the little grooves, and wherever we clipped on, we stayed. So our harmonizing worked really well. To find another teammate that could do it / a third robot that could climb even when the opportunity arose was just not common. Like it was really rare.
Does anybody know how many times that RP was achieved at Superior or Northern Lights?
I would suspect that ranking point was probably giving more often because someone got hit while they were off the ground than actually for the reason that the ranking point gives ranking point.
I get you.
We were hit actually in our first calls match. We were hit when we were off the ground, and they did not give us the double tech foul and the ranking point, unfortunately. So, we ended up winning the match, but we could have had 4 ranking points instead of 3. They did start calling it, whether they saw it or not, I don't know, but they did start calling it throughout the day after our match. So I have a feeling that it was probably achieved more often because someone got hit while off the ground than all 3 robots off the ground or off the ground with a microphone ringed or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, it seemed very rare. I don't know that I saw one for sure. I watched for a few hours over there. So
we did win a match only because our trap successfully scored one of the 2 times that we trapped. It actually I'm pretty sure it made the difference in the game.
You guys won that match by 1, I think.
Yeah, it was super, super lucky. And our other robot, we weren't harmonized. I don't remember, but it was super lucky. Yeah. So we'll take it, I guess, better to be lucky than to not be lucky.
Yeah, we ended up hitting it twice, but we ran into the whole, it works great on the practice field, works great at home, real field's different. And we ended up changing actually 3 different parts of our mechanisms to get it to go. And it's like, you spent half your qual matches just fighting that, and now you've got your RP generator, but it's a little too late,
And then it's useless in playoffs.
Well, that too, right? Well, that's the other thing is, if you're trying to get the note RP and SARS takes like 30 seconds, and it's like you come down to we need 3 notes for the note RP, or what do we do now? It's 30 seconds to go. Do we try to get it, or do we go for the trap? And so
You go for the note RP.
Well, exactly, and that's what we tried. That's what we pretty much did. But it's
yep.
There was one over on Northern Lights that, I mean, I think it was a 60 something team, but they could do the trap. There was several matches where they filled all 3 traps.
That was Minnetonka, right?
Yeah, 61-97, I think.
Yeah,
it's West Tonka.
Or West Tonka.
It was
61-47.
Yeah.
super impressive. Has me rethinking a whole bunch of strategy stuff. Honestly, very
and it was like maybe from when they touched the chain to when they got back down to the ground was maybe like 6 or 7 seconds.
Yep,
Like
super fast.
Yeah, it was crazy.
You know,
one thing that scared me about them was that because they were trapping what before the stage was protected, I think within the rules, if another robot hit them and they fell off the chain, whether it be on accident, and I hope not on purpose because that wouldn't be very GP, they wouldn't really have any of that protection because it's a fast cycling area. What would scare me is if they had gotten knocked down, right, and then because obviously the chain isn't protected during that time.
No, it is. If you're off the ground, off the ground and you get hit, it's a double tech foul and a ranking point. Doesn't matter.
I thought it was only the last 20 seconds.
The last 20 seconds is if you're on the ground in the stage, but if you're off the ground at any time, doesn't matter when it is, it's double tech foul and a ranking point.
Wow.
Is it a ranking point or a free climb?
It's a full RP.
It's their full RP. Wow. Yeah, it's rule G424. I'm pretty sure it's 424. Yeah, and we went and talked to the referees after our match about it because we weren't sure if they didn't flag it because they didn't know that it was the entire match and they need to go back and reference the rules again, or if no, they just didn't see it. So I don't know what the case may be, but we did go to the queue and check with them on G424 and make sure that the rule as we understood it was the rule as they understood it.
I think as the weeks go on, we will see more and more where somehow all 3 traps get filled, like Mount West Tonka or Tonka, whoever it was, did, because those 15 points are they're really hard to. At first, I thought, well, hey, that's one amplification scenario where you put in 3 notes. One amplification where you put 3 notes in was not easy to do. I thought, hey, we would get a whole bunch where we would get 3 or 4 notes in. It's not super clean to be able to actually get your partners and you all on the same page when amplification is, when defense is getting played, to actually get them in. Where for them, I mean, they were really fast at it. I watched some of their matches and it was that's 15 points that no one else has access to, compared to other bots. Where on Lake Superior side, the only reason you ever trapped was, I think, KnightKrawler, the one time they did it because they needed 4 RP, and they pushed it where they ended up getting only 15 of the notes in, and they got the trap, but they got the 4 RP in the win. But it was tight. Their trap mech was a little slow. That took them away from cycling. It was going to be real close if they got all 4, if they missed. And at the very, very end, how the rankings shook out was really interesting because in the last match, was it Sir Lancer bots? They went for 4 RP. They would have jumped to 1. And if they would have got 3 RP, they would have went to 2. And they went for all 4. They ultimately missed the RP for notes by 1, and they missed the climb by 1 robot, and they ended up with only 2 RP and stayed down at 3 instead.
No,
so
they got 0 RP that match because they lost.
And they lost. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we were paying attention to that too because at that time I think we were in first at that point, but we were maybe not. Maybe that was after we had dropped out of first, but we had noticed that too, that they missed that they only need 1 more note. They would have been better off scoring at least that 1 more note. It would have helped. But you know what? that's how things go. Everyone's in a rush. You have a plan, and then things fall apart, unfortunately.
Yeah, just ask us.
Yeah, but that's a good thing. I mean, that's also a good tip for everybody is pay attention. You know, what Sam had just made the comment too of pay attention to what you've got to get that melody ranking point. Because if you only got 1 or 2 more to go, you're better off going for those 1 or 2 more notes and just parking rather than trying to do a climb or a harmony, because it has been proven to be really hard to get a harmony. The other hard part about a harmony is if one robot's on the ground and you're touching, then you nullify the whole thing. So you really can't rush a harmony because you need to make sure that everybody's off the ground.
The other interesting thing to me about climbing is I'm not sure if climbing is that really effective as of a way to score points, like even in playoff matches, right? Because if parking is 1 point and climbing is 3 points, that's basically one more. If you can do just one note cycle in the time it takes you to climb, you're better off probably doing that note cycle than a climb, which can be a lot more finicky and you have a chance to amplify and, all those other things, to the point where, part of me, especially for teams with climber in a boxes that are huge note hazards of notes getting caught on them, is like, should those teams just take off the climber in a boxes, and not even have that risk and just say, hey, we're just going to park at the end of the match?
That was our strategy in finals because there's no sense to try to get a ranking point. So if you go back and look at our finals matches, I think we parked half the time when we only would climb if there was no chance of us getting another note scored.
Yeah, Scott, we were in the same boat where we had no intention to climb unless there was less than 10 seconds left. If there was less than 10 seconds, we couldn't get to the other side and back and put the note in, then you knew you might as well climb, because we could put our climber in the boxes up, clip on, and be up in under 5 seconds. So it's like, you might as well snag those 3 points, but if not, you might as well just keep cycling, because if your whole team happens to keep cycling, there's just more point potential there.
Yeah, and I mean, especially from, I think if you're a climber in a box team that doesn't have the climber in a boxes protected, which seem to be nearly all of the climber in a box teams, and that's something I'm scared about because our team has 2 unprotected climber in a boxes. It's all of the Quokka robots. That's really scary, especially going into playoffs where, in prelims, it might not be a huge deal, but if you're in match 13 fighting to get into the finals, or, you're in match 3 of the finals and a note gets stuck on it, like 44-14 High Tide just got eliminated at Port Hueneme because their partner's robot got a note stuck on them, right? And that's, insane to think about, where it's like, that is such an impactful thing on the course of a match for something so little.
Yeah, we actually got a note stuck on us. We had to go play D in one of our qual matches. By Saturday morning, our kids had I don't even know what you would call it, a mesh type gross string thing that connected from our limelight tower to our arm, our Quokka's arm, and it basically would bounce notes out of our robot. And yep, we still could have got notes stuck in there, but it decreased the chances significantly. But yeah, finding a way to make your robot more note proof is definitely recommended. Like we straight up could have lost a match. We just happened to have good teammates the time we got a note stuck in us that we could still win.
We kind of note proofed our climber in the box, but ours is, we just have a single and it's on our Quokka's arm on the back. It's like a backpack, little mini backpack. You can check out our YouTube if you want to see it. But we just tied some surgical tubing up to one of the gel tubes on our Quokka arm. So now the note cannot ringer on that climber in a box. She can lift up the arm all the way and just give it a little flip and it comes off. So, but our climber is limited in other ways, but that's the way we solve that problem, I guess.
So Jesse, I've seen your guys' bot. Where I'm talking about is on top of your arm. That's where ours got stuck, and we couldn't get it
You
out.
couldn't just lift up the arm and it fell off.
Oh, we have a limelight tower in front of our arm, so when we lift it up to go amp, it would pin against the limelight tower. I guess you guys don't have that. I don't think.
No, we don't.
Yeah, and this is where for No Mythic, the spot that we found also being goofy for notes is because we have like a shooting arm thing that goes up and down, and when that's in its up position, because that's how we did the amp, or that's what not amp. I mean, yes, amp, but then also if we want to pick it from the source directly, and there was I think match 60, we got a note stuck in the belly of our robot. Luckily that match got replayed, which we got super lucky for. But then after that, we were like, shoot, we need to put something here so notes can't get stuck there. So that's another spot.
Yeah, I'm worried about that with the Quokka type of deal too, because if it gets in underneath that arm, then you're screwed. You're not getting that out. So I was thinking even like a piece of fabric that kind of just would accordion down when you're collapsed, and then would stretch up tight. You just have to measure it and cut it, But that's kind of cumbersome too. I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but
watch KnightKrawler smash against the stage post a whole bunch trying to dislodge a note during playoffs. I think it was, Scott, wasn't it? When you guys got a note stuck on there and you just started smashing one of the pillars until it got off.
I don't remember that. Are you sure that was us? I don't remember that.
Maybe it wasn't you, but for some reason,
team on the other alliance. I don't remember which one it was. It was in finals too.
We put a lot of effort into our design to make sure that we didn't have any ring toss posts. That's not to say it can't happen. Knock on wood, it probably will at some point. Now that I've said that, but our climber specifically was intended to avoid those types of problems. All right, we're past time, but this has been a fantastic conversation. I don't want to kick us off the call. Do we have any other big topics we want to address before we go? Otherwise, we could wrap it up, I guess. What does everyone think?
I got a total topic change here. So
go for it.
A friend of mine helps place foreign exchange students with families, and they have a whole big list of students who are interested in coming to Minnesota, who are either currently on robotics teams, whether they be first teams or other teams, or very interested in robotics from all over the world. So if people want to share or want information about hosting a foreign exchange student, or share with families in your area, right? I've got info that I can share, and we can get bios, and you can find some people who are interested. We've had foreign exchange students on our team before, and it's been a great experience for the foreign exchange student and for the students and the mentors on the team. We also had a lot of students whose families just moved to the United States as seniors in high school or temporarily at other times, and that's been a wonderful experience for us to get a lot of variety. Some of them have experience with first or Vex teams, which has been fun to see the differences, and they get to speed pretty quickly. So
that's cool. We had a foreign exchange student on our team 4 or 5 years ago. Neat experience. It really is. I agree. I said I would do this earlier and I forgot. I've done it now. I pasted the link to the sign up forms and the watch list and get the email and add it to your calendar. For those of you watching it on replay on YouTube, it's team2052.com/roundtable. Roundtable's one word, all lowercase. You can find it there. That way you can get on the mailing list and get the weekly reminders and see what the topic's going to be. Pat, what do you want to do? Do you have anything else you want to chat about?
Nope. I think we got through.
Oh, Spencer's got something.
He's our drive
Spencer.
coach.
Yeah, so like Shooty mentioned, I'm the drive coach and lead mechanical guy for 5348. And after this competition, we realized that we really just want to be faster. We're running Mark IV L2 SDS Swerve with Neo 1650s. We were looking to move to either the Neo Vortexes or the Krakens. And I'm just wondering if anyone has input on which of those we should choose. We tend to stick more to the Rev products side of the spectrum, but I think we could pull off either one. So
We're running Krakens. We have one Vortex on our robot. We haven't had a problem with Krakens or the Vortexes from a comms point of view or anything like that. I know that other teams seem to have had issues with Krakens if they don't do their current limiting correctly, or if they run them too hot. The Krakens have, like the Falcons, have a cooling port on them. So if you're practicing with them for an hour, you can spray in some air, compressed air or something else to cool them down because they run so hot, I guess. I don't have a recommendation one way or the other. Does anyone have anything good or bad to say about one versus the other?
I think it depends a lot on the gearing of your robot. So if your robot is geared at level 1 or 2, I would say maybe, because Vortexes have the fastest free speed of any of the brushless motors. So we're stuck with level 1s because SDS said that they'd get gears and then they never put gears back in stock and then whatever. So because we're stuck at level 1, we're running Vortexes because acceleration isn't as big of an issue for us at level 1. And so level 1 Vortexes is the same top speed as a level 2 field-oriented control Falcon or Kraken. And I'd say there's probably better acceleration for the Kraken and pushing power. But it depends. Yeah.
Yeah, and for No Mythic here, we chose Krakens. And I'm not a huge programmer or anything, but the Krakens use the Town Effect system, same as the Falcons, and we were using those before. So that was a big reason for going Krakens, was that it was the same or a similar system. So I think that's also another thing to bring up for choosing which one.
I'd say it's hard to depends on how comfortable you are with code. I mean, we switched from the Neos to the Vortexes this year, and I think almost no code change. I mean, it's super simple. That being said, we're running some Krakens too, and the Kraken, the motor controller, the Talon FX, just it has more software features. So something to consider.
How many spare Vortexes do you have, Sam?
4 on the dot.
Never mind then. Those things you can't find those things for anything.
I will say that we've had a good few number of flexes and Vortexes crap out on us, either from having to swap them back in because of shaft wobble issues, even after they supposedly fixed it. And then we had someone put bolts in more than a 1/4 inch into the spark flex on accident, even with that line. And even after, lecturing an entire team to not do that, you're going to step away from build for 1 second and someone's going to do it. And that breaks both the flex and the Vortex. And then they say, the flex broke. We're just going to swap out the flex. And then they put in a new spark flex and use the same bolts. So that's unfortunate for us and how many we have spares. I think we only have we're down to 2 spares now. But then also for some cases, it's, I think, a lot of, we've had some weird issues we've ran into with them. And it's a new motor. But, one of the things of running them on our drivetrain is not many people are running them on their drivetrains. So we had this weird encoder thing going on for a day right before our week 0. So we couldn't get it. And then for week 0, it magically fixed itself. And we still don't know what caused that. Hasn't shown back up. But we really are just, worried about are there any more weird things that are just going to pop up?
All right. Anyone else have any last minute questions or pieces of feedback they want to make sure it gets in the recording?
Well, I've got one more thing we can share. Wouldn't be a week one wrap up without taking a look at the rankings. Of course, screen sharing is crapping out on me.
Yeah, welcome to the club.
There it goes. So these are not quite posted yet. We're waiting for one more thing from the high school league before we can get all these posted. But here are what the rankings will be when we post them.
Hey,
Thanks,
I did
John.
the math right. I figured we had 36.
Thanks, John. This will be, I think, paused a lot on the YouTube watch back. This is great.
At least for the next 12 hours or so until
Yeah.
high school league gets back to me.
Got it. All right. Well, I feel like that's a good spot to end tonight. Thank you so much, Pat. It was a good discussion. I appreciate you taking the lead and keeping the topics rolling. I don't believe that anyone has signed up for next week. Let me double check here quickly. 310. Oh, no. Oh, Patrick, you're on
I
there
signed
too.
up because there wasn't one for this week.
Got
so
it. All right. That was an oversight, but I'm going to have next week's cleared. I'll have Lexi do that. I'll have next week's cleared, but we don't have anybody signed up. Actually, no sessions in the future. So if anyone's interested, please sign up to host a topic. Sam, did you offer to do a PID thing a while back? Was that you? Somebody
Yeah,
did.
I'll do it eventually. I'm internally, it's got to find time to make the presentation, but yeah.
That's great. Yeah, if you
Soon.
could. Anytime in the future. I'm not putting you on the spot for next week.
Sure.
I actually might put together a presentation on how we do LEDs. We spent a lot of time trying to build a simplified training mechanism hookup that could transfer right from the table to the robot. I have a goal of doing that sometime, but like you, as soon as I can get a chance to actually make a rig that presents well. But if anybody has anything, doesn't even have to be a presentation. And in fact, it's rarely a presentation. If you just want to talk about a topic.
I made nothing for tonight. I was like,
Yeah.
we'll just wing it.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to talk about alliance strategy, picking anything anybody wants to talk about, please host a topic and we'll talk about it. If I have to make something up for next week, who knows what we're going to chat about.
I have one other thing, Scott. If anyone's looking for something to do week 3, I think Becker still has a few slots open for their week 3 get together, hang out at their place, and let's run some matches and have fun and get prepped for week 4, week 6, I guess, for the teams that are doing that. We are actually done. Like, we are a one regional team. That's all we do. So if we don't make state, we're in, I guess, crying mode.
All right.
But we'll be at week 3.
So, all right, great. That's a good tip. Yeah, the Becker. Does anybody know where to sign up for that? Is that on their website?
It's on their website. Yep.
And it's probably in the email that Nicole sends out to mentors for the Minnesota. What's coming? So if you're not a mentor, talk to your mentor. Oh, there we go. Sam posted it. Okay, I guess that's it. Long call, but very, very good call. So thank you, everyone who participated on the call tonight. It was great to have such a big crowd. We'll do this again every Sunday going forward until the end of the season for sure, maybe even beyond that. But thanks again. See everybody next week.
Thanks, everyone. Good job.